Hello and welcome to the Federal. I am Nilanjan Mukhopadhyay, your guest for the program Off the Beaten Track. In the last few years, India has become a more polarized nation. There is a growing tendency to take positions on the basis of false narratives. Because false narratives are often backed by political authority, it also becomes the truth. The child in each one of us who had the fearlessness of shouting that the emperor was naked has gone completely missing. I'm sure there will be nights when immense sadness envelops you. And then there will be mornings when you feel that you can take on the entire universe. To alternate between hope and despair is human. But then you will think that why am I talking about these matters which have little to do what is happening around us? Now, I am doing all this because I have with me an academic author who has some time ago come out with his first book for a wider non-academic readership. Rajeev Bhargava has spent more than 4 decades as a teacher. Several of my close friends have been his students. He is a well-known political philosopher who taught generations of students of the Jawaharlal Nehru University and the University of Delhi. He was also director of the Center for the Study of Developing Societies and remains connected with this premier institution. Now, Rajeev Bhargava, welcome to this program. You have written this very interesting book, Between Hope and Despair, 100 ethical reflections on contemporary India.
Yeah.
First of all, congratulations on this book and welcome to this program.
Thank you, Nilanjan, for inviting me to this program, and thank you for wishing me well for the, when I say success, I mean the public outreach of the book. That's what I want.
Public outreach being read and being appreciated, and you being able to achieve the objective that you intended to do by this book. And let me give a background for the benefit of our viewers. You essentially started about 5-6 years ago writing a column for the Hindu newspaper, where you decided and discussed with the editors that you shall not write anything which is topical on the headline of the day, but more on reflective issues, kind of in a way mirroring the kind of work, academic work, which you have done, but trying to put across very dense, complicated issues to a reader who does not understand political science the way an academic does. But purely as a citizen, one is constantly confronted with the issues that you are actually talking about. Now, let me start with something which is very important for me, trying to understand your cover, which says that between hope and despair. Now, if you actually look at it, the font size of hope is slightly bigger than despair. Now, this could have been your decision, could have been that of the designer, it could also have been a specific directive from the publisher. I'm not really getting into it. But when we actually talk about your book and the collection, then we actually come across the first sentence which you write. You actually rake up a very important issue. Your sentence says that India's collective identity is under duress. Now, it's a very short statement, but it also says a lot. I want to understand from you in a slightly, not just one sentence, but what exactly you intend to make this your opening statement.
Yeah, I think in the last 10 years or so, I think the statement says India's collective ethical identity is under duress.
Right.
And I think it's not wrong to say that that is our collective identity. But we had a constitutional vision of a pluralist society, people with different ideas, different conceptions of what gives them ultimate self-fulfillment what is their idea of the best possible good life, there was no single answer to this question. There were many, many answers. Many of them were within the framework of religion, and some were outside religion altogether. Right. So we had multiple religio-philosophical conceptions of the good life. Now, one term that refers to the good life is ethical. Right? Ethics has two components to it. In the broadest possible sense of ethics, it has two components. One is to do with, what is the good, what gives meaning to your life, what makes it worthwhile. And there is another component which we narrowly might call moral, which is to do with conduct in the interpersonal domain. How must we treat other people who have different conceptions of a good life. And our collective identity was, ethical identity enshrined in the Constitution, was that we have no single idea of the good. We have multiple ideas of the good, but we will follow certain basic moral framework principles as stated in our Constitution, which we may call constitutional morality, which is going to guide us in the pursuit of this good life. And I think I felt that the moral content of this ethical identity has waned considerably. We just want to pursue our good, regardless of what happens to other people. Even if we harm other people, we must pursue the good life. And the pluralism that was very much a part of a constitutional framework, that's been challenged by one dominant conception of what this good life is, which is defined by some Hindus or people who proclaim to be Hindus. And I
political
think, Hindus or political Hindus, I mean, obviously, they're political because they are making a political program out of it. But maybe there are many Hindus who actually support it. I think the initial constitutional vision is under attack. And I didn't put it so strongly, but I said that it's under duress, certainly. Right? There are at least two ideas of the good, and there are those who want to pursue their own conception of good life along with others following the constitutional morality. And there are those who want everybody to pursue one idea of the good life, and regardless of whether our constitutional morality is followed or not. And this contest is what I wanted to express through the term duress.
Right. When you talk about constitutional morality, I would just want to narrate to you something which happened just the other day. There was this very important Supreme Court verdict on the Election Commission, the decision to form a collegium type of a body consisting of the Prime Minister, the leader of the opposition, failing not a single party having a leader of opposition, the largest political party, and the Chief Justice of India to select and recommend the appointment of the Chief Election Commissioner and election commissioners. Now, when this news came on the news wires, I was inside a television studio discussing the results as were coming out from the north states in Northeast India. Now, there was a collective sigh within the studio when this news came. Nobody was really prepared for this news, the verdict coming out. There had not been any advance information that such an important judgment was billed for that particular day. But going back to it, that the very fact that the judiciary has to come up with a judgment like that means that there has been a certain erosion in the constitutional morality of the Election Commission. I'm sorry if I'm actually, using, trying to explain something which is there in my mind in maybe not the perfect way as an academic would. But I
No,
definitely think that caused the Supreme Court to give a verdict, because according to it, the Election Commission is not functioning according to the Constitution. In the last few years, we are actually constantly talking about, as a journalist, we keep on saying that India's institutional framework is under attack. Now, as an academic, when you see this, when you read about what people like us write, how would you theorize it, that what is really happening?
Yeah, so I think just to connect with the point that you just made, we have certain fundamental rights, and these fundamental rights, whenever they're violated, since these are justiciable, we can go to the judiciary to intervene and to ensure that these rights are followed. Now, if our rights are violated by other individuals or non-state groups, then the judiciary acts impartially as an institution of the state. And that's what we expect it to do, to enforce these rights. But this judiciary has another task. If any other arm of the government or of the state violates our rights, because these rights are not just against other individuals, but also against the government and the rest of the state, the judiciary must step in to restore these rights and to punish the offender of these rights.
Right.
In sum, we can all, what gives us meaning in our life is, both as individuals and as members of a community, what gives us meaning is something that we have inscribed in our idea of the good, the vision, right? But we know that all these things can be pursued only when there is, when our fundamental rights are being protected. And this can be done only by impartial state institutions. And what has happened today is that, at least amongst many of us, the feeling is that the state is not acting impartially. Even the judiciary was, for many of us, began to believe that the judiciary is not acting in an impartial manner. It is working as an arm of the government, or an arm as an arm of certain interests. And it's whether it's true or false is something which is not for me to say. I was only talking about certain impressions that we seem to have, at least the people that I have around me. And this is not new. This happened during even the emergency. It has happened from time to time. We have had these impressions. But the different instruments of the state, we expect them to course correct quite quickly. People make mistakes. Human beings always make mistakes. They're not perfect. They're fallible. And whenever mistakes are made, other individuals within the state or other agencies of the state can quickly correct it. So this is what, this is the very, it gladdened us, our hearts. At least I was very pleased that if the judiciary felt that the Election Commission was not behaving impartially, it felt compelled to intervene and to restore a sense of impartiality to the Election Commission. I don't know when it will actually be enforced. I hope it happens before 2024. But I felt that I felt very happy when the judiciary, I found the judiciary having the guts to behave impartially and to ensure that other state institutions also acted impartially. So this is to ensure impartiality in the democratic process, which is the only way in which we can take, as a whole nation, as a whole imagined community, we can take collective decisions about who will be in power and enter into the public domain to influence the course of action of not only the government but also other agencies within our society. And yeah, this is something which is so fundamental. The whole, democracy is so central to collective decision making at all levels,
Right.
which is such an important thing for community life, and the life that we lead as individuals. That it came as a very big relief that something like this happened.
Just to reply to your, you had said that you hope that this will happen before 2024 elections. Let me just point it out that the tenure of the present Chief Election Commissioner is going to continue well beyond the 2024 parliamentary elections. So whatever be the nature of the present election commission, this is what will be till the next parliamentary election. We as citizens just hope that the pressure, the moral pressure of this Supreme Court verdict would weigh on the current election commission, and they shall not do anything which actually caused such a judgment to come out in the first place.
Absolutely. I think this would certainly, it should act as a moral pressure.
Yeah,
you're absolutely correct in saying so.
Yeah, we can actually hope that. You were talking about the judiciary and also the power of the judiciary to look at violations of laws, interpret laws. In the last few months, we have also seen a tendency from the government's side to question the powers of the judiciary. We've had the vice president as well as the union law minister questioning the judiciary's very basic powers. It has also said that the judiciary does not have the right to decide whether any law that is passed by parliament, whether it is violative of the constitution or not, because parliament is supreme. That is exactly what the law minister said, that we are the ones who are getting elected, you are not getting elected. So are we, as a political scientist, that is this actually moving towards some kind of what a journalist like me would try to put it as tyranny of the elected? Are we actually approaching a situation which is being taken on and the judiciary is possibly trying to resist? This is 2023 is also a very important year because the 50th anniversary year of the Keshavanand Bharti case, where the basic structure of the constitution was spelled out. Now, these are very important things for us as people who are the interface between public and the academics. But from a political scientist perspective, how do you look at all these attempts from the government, the basic structure of the constitutions? We just keep on using these phrases.
Yeah, I think it's very clear that India is a constitutional democracy.
Right.
And the form of democracy is parliamentary, it's not presidential. But
right.
Both if either way, whether it was presidential or parliamentary, it has to function within the framework of the constitution. So it is not, the parliament is not supreme in India.
Right.
The constitution is supreme in India.
Okay.
And if parliament, elected members of the parliament enact laws, that is precisely why the constitution was made. If the elected members of the parliament enacted laws that anybody felt was violative of the constitution, that person or that group had the right to take these laws to not only to publicly scrutinize these laws, but to take it to the constitution and to the constitutional judges, to the Supreme Court, to arbitrate and then to pass a verdict on whether these were constitutional or not. So I don't agree with the law minister when he says that the parliament is supreme. That is not the case. It's the parliament is, the elected members of the parliament are one very important component of our democracy. But apart from the legislature, there is the executive, which is supposed to implement the laws. and there is the judiciary, which is meant to interpret whether the laws are in accordance with the Constitution or not. If the Parliament today decides to have, umpteen number of laws that violate all the rights of the people, then the judiciary is bound by the Constitution to intervene and to restore these fundamental rights to the people. So the elected members, in my view, are not supreme. And I think it would not be unfair if you were to say that this is, if they insisted on being supreme, you would be right in saying that this is the tyranny of the elected members.
When you were talking about, and you stated, that in our country, the Constitution is supreme, I was reminded of something that we possibly have all forgotten in the last few months that this debate has been raked up. Let me take you back to 2014 when this NDA government was elected for the first time, and the Prime Minister, Mr. Narendra Modi, went to Parliament for the first time. He made a very important statement, where he said that India has only one holy text, and that is the Constitution. So when the law minister and the vice president were possibly emphasizing the supremacy of the Constitution, I think that this statement should have been shown to them, which actually brings us back to this entire ethical question that we say certain things without actually meaning it. I think this has become something which is has become common to everyone. And I, as a representative, as a person who interacts a lot with common society, with the citizens, would feel that people take the leads from the political leaders. They took a different set of values from leaders like Gandhi, Nehru at that time. I'm not going into naming each one of them. But if this becomes the norm, a very important statement made by a newly elected prime minister 9 years down the line gets violated, and the collective memory has completely erased it because so much is said that we just forget it. So this is something which came into my mind. I thought I will just share with you.
And I want to add something here. In one of the articles at the very beginning of this book, one of the chapters is titled "No Other Book Can Trump the Indian Constitution."
Right.
And I was actually referring to a remark which was made by the then minister of the West Bengal government. I can't remember his name, maybe Siddiqullah Chaudhary or somebody, who had said that if there was a conflict between the Quran on the one hand and the Constitution on the other, he thought that the Quran would be supreme. And I was very upset by that. And I wrote a short article saying that is not the case. We are, if at all, I've mentioned somewhere that for the first time in 1950, all Indians also became the people of a book, which has never been the case in India. We have never been a people as a whole of any single book. But by adopting the Constitution, we committed ourselves to one book, namely the Constitution. And this Constitution is something that we can all embrace because it doesn't dictate to us what religion to follow, what philosophy to follow, which particular conception of the good to follow. Right? You can be a Muslim, a Hindu, a Sikh, a Parsi, a non-believer, a non-practitioner of any ritual. You can be anything. Not this is about religion, but also about any. It doesn't have to be your ideas may or may not be grounded in caste or region or gender. Regardless of all these things, we adopted one book and its law as the one to be followed. And so I firmly stand by that statement. Whether we are Hindus or Muslims or Sikhs, we are bound by another book, because this is the only way we can live together. If each one of us...
Otherwise, our religious books will constantly be in conflict with one another.
Yes. So it was to prevent that conflict that we decided that we will have a book which will frame the moral framework within which we are to live together happily, and not only live together but flourish together as a nation. And Yeah,
Yes.
I'm entirely in favor of, I can continue to back that statement, and I hope everybody will have the sense
Yes.
to follow that simple precept. Yeah.
So do I. I think it is time for us to remind this government, this country, of the Prime Minister's statement made almost 9 years back. There is
Could you
one more.
stand by the statement of the Prime Minister when he made that statement? Yeah.
Made it by the Prime Minister. That's most important. There is another very important point which you make in one of the essays, where you are talking about the debate in the Constituent Assembly, that should we actually emphasize our Republican character and not and leave out the democratic character, or should we have mentioned that we are a republic as well as democratic? And then you say, that Ambedkar and Nehru did concede that there can actually theoretically a possibility exist of there being an undemocratic republic. Now, having said that, yes, we can be a republic yet become undemocratic. Given what all you have seen and what you are actually writing about the collective ethical identity being under duress, do you think that India has somehow or the other, that is where your despair comes from, moving towards becoming an undemocratic republic, that the danger lurks in the corner?
Well, we are not only becoming there is a danger. I wouldn't say that we have become. Yes. There is a danger of us becoming both undemocratic and non-republic.
Right.
I have said in that same article, I've tried to make a distinction between what makes us Republican and what makes us democratic. What makes us democratic is maximal inclusiveness. Right? All the people, regardless of their religion, gender, caste, regional,
profession,
language, all people. And in that sense, there have been very few democracies before the 20th century. Even those that call themselves democracies, and there were few, were not really fully democracies. And not only were they not full democracies, because they excluded, even Athens, for example, in Greece, it excluded women and it excluded slaves from citizenship. So if anyone is excluded from the decision-making arena, then we become undemocratic. But what makes us Republican is the quality of our participation. Even in ancient India, there were republics, but they were not democratic republics. They were what we might call ancient clan republics. What made them republics rather than monarchies was the fact that there were a few people who took decisions by discussion. These were governments by discussion. Discussion was central. And those were decisions taken within very small assemblies by very few citizens, but nonetheless, because they were discursive and because people discussed, debated, argued with each other, that gave them its Republican character. In modern democracies, modern republics, you cannot have these little assemblies. You have a large public sphere with intercommunicating media. And through many forums, anyone can bring up an issue to the public in the common domain, and by making that issue public, it can invite any other person in the whole of the country, either through social media or through formal electronic media or through the print media or through public street protests and demonstrations. Anybody can join that debate and conversation. And if this public character, which is what a republic means, the public thing, if this public character of our participation is diminished or is lost, then we can remain a democracy in a very thin sense, where everybody can go and vote who is to come to who's to be chosen to be our leader, but everything can be decided by the leader, and there would be no discussion, right? So we can be formally and in a very thin sense be democratic, but a Republican character will be lost. So the republic character of our polity gives democracy its depth. But because republics can be restricted to a few citizens, democracy gives a wide kind of, it makes everybody, it includes everybody into the discussion. And both are absolutely essential.
So would you say that the biggest, this is my last question, that the biggest crisis which India faces at the moment is that we are actually becoming very short on discussions and conversations. Even our decision-making process has become so centralized. We know how decisions are taken in this government. Is that the biggest crisis that we face?
Well, yeah, I think this is, I wouldn't know whether it is the biggest crisis, but certainly a very big crisis.
Okay.
The lack of participation in decision-making.
Right.
The various ways in which the conversation that between people is blocked, it's disrupted, it's broken. If this keeps increasing, then this is a very big crisis of our Republican democracy. Maybe it is the biggest crisis, but this certainly,
very difficult. It would not be very fair to say this is the biggest crisis. Tomorrow there can be bigger crisis. But I think so, it's very well put by you that, well, yes, that conversations is absolutely essential to both democracy as well as, to be a republic.
As a matter of fact, Nilanjan, I've said that a nation, for me, a nation is a people in conversation with one another.
Right.
There is no nation is not an aggregate of people. It's a nation where the people of the nation are connected. They're constantly, and that they're renewing that connection all the time. And this connection can be renewed only by conversation. So anybody who breaks that conversation, who disrupts that conversation, is breaking the nation. And someone breaking the nation is doing an anti-national activity. So we should beware. We should beware of the perpetrators of violence and of all the disruptors of this conversation that is taking place between people at every level. That's what worries me most, and this is related to the point about us being republics and democratic. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for having participated in this conversation, and I'm sure that by our conversation, we have actually to some other extent or the other, repelled the anti-national forces. I wish you, luck on taking this book to a far wider readership than what it has reached already. And I'm hopeful that our conversation will take it to some more readers. Thank you very much, Rajeev Bhargava, for being part of this program.
Thank you. Thank you, Nilanjan.
Subscribe to the Federal's YouTube page for more interesting updates.